Hi, I'm Kelly, a registered respiratory therapist with BluZone Health. Do you feel breathless much of the time? Are you unsure of how to manage your breathlessness? Is it keeping you from doing all the things that you would like to do? I'm here to help you learn to work with your healthcare team to come up with a plan that will work for you. There are lots of tools, tips, and tricks and breathing exercises that you can do now that will help you breathe easier and more effectively. I look forward to joining you on this journey and empowering you to breathe better.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Cozy Lung Lounge. We're so glad to have you here. We've had a lot of great feedback from our listeners. We've got some new topics in the works from the comments that we've received, and glad to be back today. Today we're talking about the benefits of pulmonary rehab. But first, let's talk about some of the current events in the world. What has been in the news lately, guys?
Well, for me, one thing that's going around right now, since currently it is towards the end of February, but we have had tons of walking pneumonia, we've had lots of flu going around, and RSV. So those are three things that I've seen a lot with what I do. So I just want to remind everybody, if you can get your flu shot, get your flu shot. It is going around all year round, but particularly right now. So just a helpful reminder just to keep up with vaccines because those could be really helpful.
While we're on the subject, besides flu, RSV, and pneumonia, there's a mystery, kind of a respiratory crud going around. Nobody's been able to identify it. It's not COVID. It's not a flu. It's just sort of a creeping crud. And I think that's what I had last week. I don't know. But I did want to talk for a second about the measles. So the measles outbreak that's in Texas right now, measles isn't limited to kids. And measles is passed through airborne contact, right? Through respiratory contact. So all anybody has to do is cough or sneeze or even talk right next to you. And if they are active with measles infection, you will get it unless you were vaccinated. There's a lot of talk about if you were vaccinated as a kid, do you need a booster? And that's definitely something to talk over with your doctor. But honestly, there was the last case that they found in Texas was somebody who was not part of Texas community. They flew in from another part of the US and turned positive for measles. So it's not just Texas. And I just want to remind everybody, if you're going to be out and about, go dig in the back of your closets and in your attics, find all those masks that we had from 2020 and wear them when you're out in public again. I know I am, because it only takes, if Texas is able to contain this, I will be amazed. There was a lot of people saying, oh, it's just contained to a small community that, they're kind of a farming community and they homeschool and they don't vaccinate, but that's not true. So protect yourselves.
Well, Kelly, I'm a mom of a transplant kid. So we've got immunosuppression in our household, and he can't take the MMR vaccine because it's a live vaccine. So we really depend on vaccinations to be present around us for that. And it just coincidentally, this Texas outbreak has got us working on our vacation plans. Do I take my family to Texas to the major sightseeing places this year when I have an immunosuppressed child? So really important to keep that in mind for all of us that need to protect our respiratory systems.
Absolutely.
So today we are going to be talking about the benefits of pulmonary rehab. So it actually really surprised me, just kind of starting off, how many people don't really know what pulmonary rehab is. They don't know that they have one in their area, or their doctors have never suggested it as something that they can do as part of their pulmonary health journey. So that was really interesting to learn about when I first came into the work that I do. And so basically, just the basic definition of pulmonary rehab is a comprehensive medically supervised program that's designated to improve the health and well-being of individuals with chronic lung disease. So that's essentially what it is. It is a very specific program for all of our pulmonary patients, and it should be recommended by your doctor if you have been recently diagnosed with a pulmonary disease. And you can also redo that pulmonary rehab. So if you get diagnosed with something else, or you have a worsening of your condition, I know Gina and Kelly could probably talk about that a little bit more, but you can be readmitted into what we call the phase 2 pulmonary rehab program in an outpatient clinic.
Well, I just wanted to interject. Those are great points, Amy. But a lot of my patients, when I was teaching pulmonary rehab live, would call me up and say, my name's so-and-so. My doctor said I had to come to pulmonary rehab. What the heck is that? It sounds horribly awful. So I decided pulmonary rehab really needs a new name because it doesn't sound very intriguing or exciting. So I've been trying for years to come up with a name that would be fun, and also informative. So if anybody has any ideas, please get back to us. But like Amy said, it is a medically supervised program. You will get better if you do this program. And your doctor, whether you just diagnosed or diagnosed 30 years ago, your doctor should tell you. And what really struck me was these patients would ask their doctor, what do I do in pulmonary rehab? And the doctors would be like, oh, I don't know, you just go. Like they have no idea. The doctors have no idea what goes on in pulmonary rehab. So we today are all going to tell you what goes on in rehab.
Absolutely. So really the main purpose behind pulmonary rehab, the main 3 points would be to enhance your exercise capacity and reduce breathlessness. And then we also have an improvement in your lung function and your overall fitness. And the last piece, which is really important, is to educate the participants about their condition and also about just their overall health to really help with the self-management piece of their health journey. So those are the main purposes and really what should be going on within a pulmonary rehab program. And Gina, do you know who all is working within a pulmonary rehab to help patients?
Yes, pulmonary rehab can be one profession, or it could be a diverse collection. If you're in a very small program, it's likely you have a registered nurse there. But a larger pulmonary rehab program would also have an exercise physiologist, a respiratory therapist. You might have some cardiovascular technicians in there because we're going to be monitoring all of the different parts of your breathing, including your heart.
And I think adding to that, sometimes they have nutritionists and dietitians available, even if they only come in maybe once a month, and they are staffed by the hospital to the outpatient pulmonary rehab. I know that is pretty common. And a lot of times they also try to have a medical supervisor. Again, probably somebody that's not their full-time job, but they do come in 3 days a week when that exercise class is happening. And all of those different professions combined really create an environment where there's tons of knowledge to be given, lots of really knowledgeable healthcare professionals there. And that's what I love about pulmonary rehab is all of those different people from different professions coming in to really help everybody learn as much as they can so they can be a lot more comfortable with self-management when they're finished.
I think it really sums it up nicely to say, it's education and exercise. But again, I've had people with a referral call me and say, what kind of education? And I'll say, well, this is your lungs. This is how you got sick. This is what you can do to help yourself feel better. It's all about how you feel. We can't reverse anything. We can't cure anything, but we can help you manage it, which means the translation is you will feel better. And for the exercise part, I had a lot of people say to me, well, I can't exercise, so I can't go, which is absolutely not true. That's why you're going. So you build up your endurance and build up your exercise capacity, because exercise is the one thing that's going to help you feel better. And that's why there's so many people there in pulmonary rehab, is to help you go at your pace. We're not gonna make you run a marathon, but to help you get through an exercise session so that you get stronger and stronger and stronger. And at the end of the 6 or the 8 weeks, you will feel so much better. That's kind of my pulmonary rehab spiel.
I love that all the different disciplines come together to create that broad network of educational topics. And each piece gives a little bit of an extra flavor to the things that are necessary to the health of a whole person.
And I think the best part about the exercise piece as well is that it's supervised. So Kelly, like you were saying, some people say, oh, I can't exercise or I don't exercise. And you don't have to walk to You don't have to be able to sprint across a room to exercise. A lot of times within the pulmonary rehab setting, a lot of the exercises are seated. They have things like the new step, which is moving your arms and your legs. They have the stationary bikes, some arm cycles, And then a lot of times they'll have strength classes as well, where they have all seated strength exercises. I used to volunteer in one when I was in college. That's where I did my internship. And I actually taught a lot of seated strength exercises, which was really fun. And so you don't have to have exercised before. You don't have to be able to walk and move around to be able to exercise. They have stuff there that can accommodate everybody and also provide that supervision by a healthcare professional if you are really a little bit nervous about a health event occurring while you exercise.
You know, that's a good point, Amy. I've had patients come in and all they could do on their first week or two is just, we would all sit in a circle and do stretch and warm up. At the end of the stretch and warm up, they would say, I'm pooped. I am done. That's all I can do today. That's fine. That's okay. And eventually you'll get to the point where the stretch and warm up is nothing. You'll come in and do that, and then you'll go on to do other things. I had another lady who came in. She could walk 1 minute on the treadmill. And she said, I can't go anymore. I can't go anymore. I can't go anymore. Okay, that's fine. And we gradually progressed her. And she worked her way up to 15 minutes by the end of the program. She was stunned. But, you know, one little step at a time, we meet the patients where they're at and just try to encourage them and get them stronger from there.
So when you go to pulmonary rehab, there's a lot of different things you can do. Many programs are broken down into chapters or modules so that you kind of hit the highlights every so often. So 1 week you'll talk about medications. 1 week, you'll talk about disease management. So if you have COPD, you'll talk about pursed-lip breathing. If you have interstitial lung disease, you'll talk about conserving your breath. There'll be a week on nutrition to make sure you're getting the right nutrition topics. A little bit hitting each week so that it's a nice, well-rounded program. Since 12 weeks is a typical schedule, you often have 12 weeks of different kinds of topics. Another benefit of pulmonary rehab you'll have topics in is how to deal with stress and breathlessness.
And one thing about those topics is they often build on each other. So in other words, if you go to rehab, you need to go to every single one. It's not like picking and choosing the topics that you want because they really do build on each other. So for example, maybe the first week, the first couple of days, you'll learn about pursed lip diaphragmatic breathing, how to slow your breathing down and get a really good deep breath in. And then the next time you'll learn how to do that while you're exercising. And then the next time you'll learn something else that you pair. And so it builds as you go along. So it's important if you go to actually go to every session as much as you can.
Even by going to every session, it builds confidence in yourself. It builds habits. Little by little, it just becomes part of your day. You're not as scared after the fourth and fifth session as you are the first. Everybody will be apprehensive going in the first time. That's natural. But every time you go, it's easier and easier until it's just like something you do every day. Hi, friends. This episode of the Cozy Lung Lounge is brought to you by Hoot Nanny Joy, where your health and wellness take center stage. At Hoot Nanny Joy, we know how overwhelming it can be to stay on top of your health, especially when life gets busy or chronic illness adds challenges. That's why we've created self-study programs designed to meet you right where you are. These programs are simple, flexible, and packed with tools to help you thrive. And they come with something extra, access to a live health coach. That's me, to guide you every step of the way. Whether it's improving your sleep, learning to nourish your body, or managing stress, our programs combine proven science with practical, real-life strategies. You can work at your own pace, get the answers you need during coaching sessions, and feel confident you're making progress. Ready to take that first step? Visit hootnannyjoy.com to explore the programs and choose the one that fits your journey best. Hoot Nanny Joy, because your health deserves a little joy.
And you know, I think one of the biggest benefits of going into a pulmonary rehab class, if you're the patient, is that you're going in with people that look like you. They look like you, they walk like you, they talk like you, they breathe like you. Because I know so many patients feel so alone. Their families don't get it. You know, their friends kind of, just think they move slow. But then you get 8 or 10 of them together in a group and they're all dealing with the same kind of thing, a lot of camaraderie happens. They're encouraging each other. They're spurring each other on. Somebody doesn't make it to class, they're calling them up. Where are you? That kind of support and friendship. Built some really lasting friendships over all the pulmonary rehab classes that I've taught. So that's another reason to go. And you won't feel like you stand out. You're going to actually blend right in to everybody that's there.
Absolutely. And I think, especially for somebody who hasn't done a lot of exercise before, and then they've recently been diagnosed with a pulmonary condition, you don't want to go to a typical gym. You don't want to go somewhere where you've got the gym rats and people who are all, big and really strong and young and doing all sorts of stuff. You want to be with people who are doing the exact same thing you are, who are also on oxygen just like you. And I think that provides a lot of comfort. And that's really important for exercise, because if you're intimidated with wherever you're going to work out, you're not going to want to go. And then you'll end up going less and less to the point where you quit. So having that good group environment, not only with, the other patients there, but also with the staff who are so helpful in answering any questions and being there for any concerns that may arise, that comfort and that peace in knowing that you've got that community is really, really important.
One of my favorite things about pulmonary rehab is that social support. And oftentimes it's held in a hospital. So in a hospital, you also usually have a coffee shop or a cafeteria. I often would go to the cafeteria for breakfast and see a group of 6 or 8 or 10 pulmonary rehab patients sitting around a table, either before or after, generally after their exercise session, spending as much time talking about their lung disease as they did exercising together just an hour before.
Yeah, all my group used to go to the movies after rehab.
And I think also the really helpful thing is that they can share tips. Now, be careful about all the different advice and tips that you may be getting from other people, but you can share some different strategies with others who are going through similar things, and they can be really helpful in kind of coming up with some creative ways to deal with things. Like when Kelly the other week was talking about putting the cannula through the shower curtain, ripping a little hole in the shower curtain so they had their oxygen. That's kind of fun tricks you wouldn't even think of that patients may be kind of sharing within that environment, and it can be really helpful.
Now, if you're doing virtual pulmonary rehab, you're going to kind of miss out on some of that social support. But there are options that are also virtual but have social support. So support groups like you find at the Right to Breathe support groups. You also could use group coaching to have that social support. And then podcasts like these, while you may not be directly live with us, you could leave comments and we can kind of interact that way. So there's many ways to interact, even if you're doing a virtual pulmonary rehab program.
And even in a virtual program, depending on how it's done, if it's a group session, then even though you're not sitting next to that person, you can see them in the little square on the screen and you can talk to them and you can chat with them in the chat box, and hopefully you're exercising and not spending the whole time chatting. But there you do build a camaraderie that way with doing things in a group session. And I will just add one thing. The biggest requirement from people who are going to enroll in rehab is the commitment. The commitment to go. I know I talked to a lot of people that I felt so horrible because I said pulmonary rehab would really help this person. It would really help this person. But this person said, I have grandkids to babysit. I pick up so-and-so before, after school. And I do this and I volunteer here and I do this and I do that. But this is your health. This is your lungs. This is your longevity and your strength. And could you put all that aside for just 6 weeks? Could somebody cover for you for 6 weeks so you can commit to being in the best shape you've ever been in? That's kind of what I tell people.
Now, will my insurance cover this? So can you talk about how to enroll in a live pulmonary rehab program with insurance, or is it all cash pay?
It really depends on your insurance. And so Amy had talked earlier about coming back for a phase 2. So a lot of insurances that pay for pulmonary rehab will only pay for one lifetime benefit. But some of them have a clause that says if you have something, if the status of your health changes, in other words, all it would take is one hospitalization for pneumonia and you're eligible to go back for another round. So just talk to your insurance company and just say, hey, if your patient is informed and you go to them and say, I know this will help me because I'm going to commit and I'm going to exercise and I'm going to learn what's wrong and I'm going to learn how to self-manage. Those are your magic words for your insurance company is, I will learn to self-manage. Once you say that, they'll be like, it's a go. It's definitely a go. But I've had patients that their insurance paid for pulmonary rehab, 6 weeks of pulmonary rehab with one flat copay. And I've had other patients who said, I can't do it because my insurance requires a copay for every visit. And so 6 weeks times 3 visits, 18 visits at $60 a copay, I can't do it. So really talk to your insurance company and find out. And this patient that had the $60 copay for 18 visits, I ended up talking to the insurance company and saying, it's an individual visit, but it's a program. Their copay should be $60 for the whole program. And they got it. So just talk to your insurance people.
Absolutely. And I think one thing I wanted to break down real quick is that there are 3 phases of pulmonary rehab. So phase 1 is generally what happens within the hospital setting if you are an inpatient. So if you have that bout of pneumonia that puts you in the hospital, that's generally when you would have that phase 1 program. Phase 2 is the outpatient program that happens. It's generally connected with the hospital. The hospital generally will have an outpatient program, hopefully. Just depends on where you are. But they do have the outpatient phase 2, which is also covered by insurance, as long as it meets the requirements with your diagnosis and the insurance company agrees to pay for it. And then phase 3, because there's 3 phases, phase 3 is not covered by insurance. So that would be a maintenance program. That is after the 12 weeks that we're talking about. So a phase 3 program, unfortunately, is not covered by insurance. So if you get to the end of the phase 2, you can participate, but it would be self-pay, and it would just depend on what your facility is offering and the price point that they have.
I've had facilities that were $3 a session for phase 3. Some, they were $30 a month. So many places really try to keep it affordable.
But there's also, there's a lot of places that don't have that maintenance or step down group. And to me, that's the hardest thing because we get them spiffed up and at the end of 6 weeks, where do they have to go? If they paid attention during the module on building a home gym, that's great. But if they didn't, now what are they faced with? Going to a gym with a bunch of people running around in spandex that they don't necessarily want to be working out with. And then they drop off and do nothing. And I think that's why something like an online program such as what BluZone has, where you're not just dropping off, you're not out in public with all these people, you're there with people like you. In a group setting or even in a one-on-one setting, but you're getting the help that you need and the encouragement and the support that you need. You're not just out there on your own.
Absolutely. And kind of a side note, if there is not a phase 2 program, because some of them can be far away, especially I know out west and in the Midwest, they are far and few in between. So if you don't have access to a phase 2, if your insurance won't cover it, or you don't have access to a phase 3, there are online programs available. So I know we have Kivo Health, which is pulmonary rehab specific, that is covered by insurance, but it's online. So if you just don't have one near you or you don't have reliable transportation, that would be something to look into. And then you also have products like BluZone Health, where it is not run through insurance, it's self-pay, and it goes from beginner with very short exercise sessions all the way through advanced. This one is not run through insurance, and the only thing about that is it doesn't have that supervision that comes with a phase 2, which can be really important. And we're definitely not a full replacement for phase 2, but if you just don't have that availability for whatever reason, you're not able to go to a phase 2, that would be an option to consider to help you get along with your health journey. It has all the education, the breathing retraining, it's got nutrition stuff, and all of the exercises. So that's just something important to mention when we're talking about pulmonary rehab. It's definitely not a replacement for an in-person by any means, unless that is just something that you're unable to do for whatever reason.
And I just want to backtrack for a second. We talked about how do people get pulmonary rehab? How do they get a referral and get in? And you have to ask your doctor. Tell your doctor that you want to go. I used to run a Better Breathers group, and I had a couple people in this group that, they came once a month to this group, and in conversation, it came out that they'd never been to pulmonary rehab. And I said, wait, aren't you a patient of Dr. So-and-so? And they said, yeah. And I said, when do you see him next? Because when you do, tell him he's fired for never sending you to pulmonary rehab all this time. And I finally talked to him because I knew this doctor. And I said, why aren't you sending these patients to rehab? They're perfect candidates. And he said, my day gets busy and I just don't think about it. I'm like, that is not an excuse. I'm sorry. So you, as the patient and your own best advocate, need to tell your doctor, hey, I heard about this pulmonary rehab. I want to go. Write me a referral and I'll look into it and take care of the rest. Doesn't cost the doctor anything.
You are definitely your own best advocate, and it's really important to know about pulmonary rehab and know what is available to you and really advocate for yourself for what you need. Because as much as you hope that your doctor, is really paying attention and giving you all of your options, unfortunately, it's true. They do get busy. They get exhausted. They've got, kids at home and other stuff going on in their mind. And so they may not be thinking about that all the time. So definitely advocate for yourself and know all of the options that are available, and really make sure to mention that and to demand your pulmonary rehab.
Now, in many pulmonary rehab programs, you're going to need a few tests. So you might need to get a pulmonary function test done or a 6-minute walk. Generally, they'll do the walking test in rehab. But if your doctor asks you to do a pulmonary function test in order for insurance to cover it, that happens sometimes in some insurances. But looking forward to having everybody join some exercise programs and pulmonary rehab so they can get their breathing under control.
Some programs also require an EKG and some even a chest X-ray, depending on the patient and their condition and when was their last X-ray or EKG, et cetera, et cetera. So prepare yourself to go do a little testing day.
Pulmonary rehab programs also work the other way. So I had a patient come in to see me in my pulmonary function lab, and they had been going to pulmonary rehab. He said in pulmonary rehab, they have me on 6 liters. But when he came to me, he was on room air or no oxygen, and he was kind of purple and breathless. And so we talked about, having it all the time and the reasons why. And so pulmonary rehab, by monitoring him regularly, was able to really establish that 6 was a better number for him. And that gave valuable information that was above and beyond a regular 6-minute walk test.
Most definitely. And about the 6-minute walk test, make sure that they titrate you. This is not a test to see if you flunk for Medicare. This is a test to see how much oxygen you need when you're moving. There's a big, big difference between the two. And the 6-minute walk test, yes, will tell you what exactly, when you're in pulmonary rehab, they will titrate you. And what should happen is you'll probably need a lot of oxygen in the beginning if you haven't been moving. But as you get more fit and in shape and more conditioned, we may even be able to turn your oxygen down. So I had a lot of patients tell me, well, the more I exercise, the more I have to turn my oxygen up. Oh, if I get on the treadmill, I'm going to have to turn it up to 15 liters a minute. Okay, you might for the first couple weeks, but once you start getting conditioned, I might be able to back that down. And I can tell you that with 90%, more than 90% of my patients, I've been able to turn that oxygen down because they started using oxygen more efficiently after they'd been to pulmonary rehab.
I'm sure Amy can talk to us more about using oxygen more efficiently. How does muscles react to pulmonary rehab?
So the more you exercise, which we're actually getting to exercise in our next podcast, so we'll get into it a little bit more in depth then. But when you exercise, your muscles will learn how to use oxygen more efficiently. They learn how to use all of their different nutrients more efficiently. And the best part about that is your body's requiring less oxygen when you exercise once those muscles have become trained. And so that really puts a lot of strain off of your lungs. You're not having to use as much oxygen, and that will really help you keep up and keep higher oxygen levels while you're exercising. And it'll help you not have to be on such high levels of oxygen.
I look forward to hearing more about exercising on that next episode. I know you'll have a lot of good tips for us. The other reason that 6-minute walk test is important in pulmonary rehab, you're going to do it at the beginning and the end and maybe the middle. And that helps you see how far you've come. In, a few weeks, you're going to be able to walk a little bit farther each time with less breathlessness. And so that's another purpose of the 6-minute walk. Everybody has a 6-minute walk these days. Your Apple Watch, everybody. There's really some kind of strict rules for it, but it also depends why you're using the test. So you hear us using those terms a lot. But in rehab, the more you exercise, the longer you'll be able to walk.
Maybe we need to do a whole episode on the 6-minute walk test done correctly. I've had patients who, they walked 600 feet in the beginning, and at the end of the program, they still only walked 600 feet, but they were able to do it with a lot less breathlessness, and they were able to do it with less oxygen. So it's not all about how far you get. It's not all about that. We're also looking at your level of breathlessness, and we're looking at how many stops do you make, and we're looking at how much oxygen do you need. So it's really a pretty comprehensive test. So make sure you don't get the short version.
I'm going to guess we'll talk about some of those Borg scores that we also talk about, those breathlessness. I'm going to guess we'll talk about that next episode. Is that part of that, Amy?
We can definitely put it in there.
Go tell your doctor you want to go, and then make that phone call and that appointment, get those pre-rehab tests done, and we'll see you there.
I hope you guys have a better understanding of what pulmonary rehab is after this little crash course. And I hope you're more excited to go, because it really is a great program. So definitely talk to your doctor, get in that phase 2 program, and everybody let us know how it goes.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for joining.
Bye.
Bye.
Living with a chronic respiratory condition doesn't mean giving up the things you love to do. At BluZone Health, we're here to help you breathe easier and rebuild your strength. Our online cardiopulmonary rehab program offers tailored exercises, self-management training, and expert support from certified respiratory therapists. Accessible anytime, it's designed to reduce breathlessness, improve lung function, and empower you, all while connecting you with a supportive community. Visit BluZone.health and take the first step towards stronger lungs and a healthier future. BluZone Health. Breathe better, live better.